I'm Natalie Mendez. I'm the president-elect of our chapter. And so we have been working very hard to put this on. And I want to just tell you a little bit about why we're doing it this week and what's going on now as the International Coaching Federation. This is what's known as International Coaching Week. And so what that means is that chapters around the globe are focused on getting out into the community, just like we're doing here today, to talk about the power of coaching, to talk about the impact of coaching. And so we get that chance today to partner with our amazing sponsor, SMU. So I just want to thank SMU for having us here on campus today. Thank you so much for being chapter sponsors, for being incredible partners, and for letting us just come out here and use your beautiful space and hold this event today. I also thank you. And keep the applause going, because we also had some amazing volunteers that stepped up today to make sure that everything ran smoothly. So if you volunteered in any way, thank you. Thank you to our board for being here. And let me just give a shout out to my partners in crime over the last couple of months, to Dara Rossi, to Kim Spikes, and to Susan Daniel, who have helped me put this whole thing together. It's just incredible to be able to work and partner with a team like that. So today we're going to talk about the power of coaching, the impact that coaching can have on EQ and well-being with educational leaders, but just the general impact that coaching can have. So if you have worked with a coach, you know what I'm talking about. You know how transformative that has been. If you have not worked with a coach, don't worry, because you are surrounded by us in here today. And we would love to connect with you. So please don't leave today without getting some names, without setting up some conversations, and without making sure that you have met somebody that you can talk to coaching about. We would love to be of assistance. But now I want to ask Kate to come up, our partner from SMU, Kate Montgomery. Please come up, and she's got to say a few words and get us started.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. It's very wonderful, after 10 years of working with Dr. Parvin on coaching courses, to see it become more formalized in the last couple of years with the ICF North Texas. I'd like to, first of all, introduce our Dean of the School of Education, Dr. Stephanie Knight, to come up and share a few remarks before I may share a few more after her. So thank you.
Thank you, Kate, and welcome to all of you to SMU Simmons. I'm so pleased to have this group here. Thank you, Kate, for arranging this. As you know, Kate is the department chair in the Human-Centered Interdisciplinary Studies group. That is both our oldest and our newest department. It existed long before Simmons actually existed as Graduate Liberal Studies. But 3 years ago, with Kate, and here's John and Mag, reinvented themselves and renamed the department the Human-Centered Interdisciplinary Studies. And I think that fits with the focus of SMU and definitely of Simmons. So I am so pleased to have this group here. It fits with our mission in Simmons as well. This what you do through the coaching, I think, is so important in this day and age. Never has it been more important. We are undergoing tremendous changes at every level. And these are changes that leaders may not have ever encountered in their careers. And the fact that they would have someone, a coach, with the expertise you have to walk alongside and help with meeting these challenges is just incredibly important work. Thank you for providing social impact, for creating healthy workplace cultures, and for having an eye to the future of what we need to be successful. Welcome to SMU, and you're welcome anytime. Thank you, Kate.
So, as I said, I have much more to say later, and my hope too is for all of you that want to advance your graduate study in this space. We would love for you to join us. We have some special scholarships available for all of you in the ICF that we'll talk about. And we're also going to be presenting the certificates and ICF credentialing letters to a number of our students. You'll get to see that later. And so super excited to have you all here. And I do not want to take any more time away from the lovely panel event that's about to start. But with my shameless plug, I'm so proud that a few of the panelists are also our lead instructors, Dr. Jennifer Parvin, Dr. Dara Rossi, and also Dr. Rankin is not on the panel, but we will hopefully get you up here a little later to celebrate with our students. So thank you. Have a wonderful day, luncheon event, and I'll be back with you soon. In the meantime, now I would like to introduce Dr. Sabrina Townsend, who will kick off the panel event. And the only other item I have in store is to try to get the screen up, and I'm marginal with technology, so bear with me. All right, Sabrina.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Sabrina Townsend, and I'm going to be your host and your moderator today of the panel discussion that we're going to have. If I could have the panelists that are here today to join me on stage, and they'll introduce themselves. So I'm not just calling random people out of the audience, just so you know. But I figured they'll do a better job than I can if I read something, right? So I'll start with myself, and then I'll just kind of go down the line, if that's okay. Okay, so I'm Dr. Sabrina Townsend, and I am a psychologist by training, but at present, I've been involved with coaching sort of bi-directionally. I've been a coach, and I actually have 3 coaches as we speak. We won't get into that, but I'm a complex and complicated individual, so I need a lot of folks to help me. But at present, I am working in technology. I'm a fractional chief human resources officer for that company, in addition to doing some therapy on the side, along with some coaching as well. So that's kind of where I am and who I am. I'll pass it to our next panelist. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Close, and I'm the Director of Membership at ICF North Texas. I came by way of 32 years as a public educator and leader. During that time, it became very clear that leadership development wasn't just do a 5-day in-service and then throw the keys at them. So I was in a very large North Texas district, and they gave me the privilege of developing the leadership development program for the whole district. Spent a year, and it was obvious after research that it had to be coaching based. It had to be over a fairly good length of time, and it had to be confidential. It could not be done by someone who supervised that leader. So we launched that program called CLASS, Coaching Louisville Leaders for Student Success. It won the PRISM Award, and my coaching career was launched. I became a PCC in 2012, an MCC 3 years ago, and now, after many years of only coaching in education, I do executive coaching and leadership training. I'm a coach mentor, and I'm a coach educator with Positive Coaching Solutions. There is nothing more important to my heart than educators and coaches, and it is a match made in heaven. And certainly nowadays, we need it desperately.
Thank you, Cheryl. Hi, I'm Dara Rossi, and I am the president of ICF North Texas, the chapter here locally. I also teach here in the coaching program, which I love. I taught here in Simmons for 10 years, but then took a coaching course and said, oh, this is it. This is the next thing. And really haven't looked back until I got to work with Dr. Montgomery and come back and start teaching in the coaching program here, and love our partnership that we have with SMU. A lot of I see my students here that have graduated and then they've joined ICF. So that's fantastic. I do executive coaching and a lot of leadership development as well as facilitation. So I'll turn it over to you. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. My name's Adam Flores. I'll just kick it off with an apology. I am not sick. I am not a Texas native. I get this way between late March, early April, and May every year. And so the allergies are just killing me. But I am here as the Director of Leadership Development for the Principal Impact Collaborative. We run out of the President's Office at the University of North Texas. I oversee our curriculum and the efforts that we have in our 2-year fellowship for principals in North Texas. And then I also oversee our coaching program. And so we are kind of this blend of executive coaching with a little bit of understanding of other types of coaching. And I'm referring to instructional coaching. We really do not, we try to stay away from instructional coaching, but because we're all educators, there are layers there, as everybody knows, and that we sometimes slip into that kind of coaching world. Mostly, though, we're focused on the individual. I appreciated the comment about, like that we're not evaluators, right? We support the individual and their growth, and we focus a lot of time and attention on their well-being. And so that's something that we're very dedicated to. Our 3 pillars of work actually are 1, leadership development, 2, individual well-being, and 3, cycles of continuous improvement through design thinking. And so we have a very, very unique program that we offer to principals and leaders across North Texas.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jennifer Parvin, and I'm going to talk about my current chapter very quickly, and then pull a few threads from beginning and intermediate chapters. And yes, Dr. Townsend, under 3 minutes for sure. So right now,
I don't have my watch, so you're good.
Okay, starting now. One of the big rocks for me currently is executive leadership coaching, primarily with school leaders, superintendents, and principals and others, as well as some nonprofit leaders and others. So that's a big part of what I do. The second big rock for me is as a coach educator, teaching here at SMU and working with wonderful students, many of whom are here today, and helping to ignite and fan the fire for them of what coaching can be. And then third, I just published in October with my wonderful co-author, Donna Michaud, a book through Solution Tree called Powerful Inquiry, Leading with Questions to Build Leadership Capacity in Your Team and District. And so all of those threads together, of course, come back to coaching and developing and cultivating. So I'm going to skip back into time very briefly and say my very first professional job was teaching English as a second language to beautiful Vietnamese, Laotian, and Cambodian students. And from them and their families, I learned the quintessential importance of relationships, of trust. My next professional gig was as a campus principal, and I had taught for a good while when I became a principal. And so I really trusted and valued teachers. And so our focus, my team and myself, was to really build those professional learning communities for teachers. And the thread I'm pulling forth from that is people are the experts on their professional and personal lives. Pretty important part of coaching. And then my third final chapter in Dallas ISD was as director of the Dallas Leadership Academy. And amazingly, one of the members of that first cohort is here today, Dr. Kelly back there. And our team had the great opportunity to partner with the New York City Leadership Academy and create something really experiential. And so from that, I took that the learning is the most important thing. The learning is much more important than the teaching. So there are those 3 threads from my early chapters that come to today: the importance of relational trust, people are naturally resourceful, creative, and whole, and third, people are the experts on their own lives. And when people engage in productive struggle, as they do in coaching, then they make meaning that they get to carry with them. So thank you for letting me pull those threads. I think that was under 3 minutes.
In all actuality, I'm going to have to borrow your clock because I realized I left out without my watch. So keep us honest, audience. We want to make sure we get time to hear from you as well. But thank you. I'll just start with that. A thank you to all of you all that have decided to spend your afternoon with us learning, in addition to those who are online. But today is going to be a really interesting conversation. I think you'll walk away really having learned some things. Obviously, we have experts here to talk to you. But I thought I would start by level setting a little bit about what we mean when we say coaching. So obviously it's a pretty popular term. Most of us maybe heard it for the first time coming out of sports. But when you think about educators in particular, which most of us have either been one, been taught by one, obviously, or something similar, there's instructional coaching, which is very common in our traditional educational system. And that's really where you're working with teachers or people that work directly with students and really helping them, move forward on their journey and, lesson planning or preparing new interventions or new lesson plans or things like that. However, what we're really going to focus on today is about that executive level coaching or leadership coaching. And that really is about what happens here at SMU through the training, the formalized training and preparation for that ICF credential, but in addition to kind of working both individually and sometimes even in groups with leaders to help balance out and improve on their overall performance. So I thought we would kick it off as we talk about burnout and kind of what that really means. Someone mentioned earlier about how important coaching is right now, especially with all that's going on in our world and in the workplace and all the dynamics and changes. But I thought we would just start first with the question, how does coaching and leadership work together to help educational leaders move from burnout to breakthrough? So Jennifer, I'll have you, if you don't mind, to start, and then Adam.
Thank you, Dr. Townsend. And, I think Adam and I can go two different directions with this. We can talk about leaders who receive coaching, and that certainly helps to move from burnout to breakthrough. And then leaders who learn how to coach, often as a result of being coached themselves. So, I would say just at the very simplest level, when a leader agrees and signs up for coaching, and I coach a lot of leaders through the Holsworth Center, and they get 20 coaching sessions over the course of the year. And when they agree to protect an hour every other week for 20 plus weeks, they are kind of going against what they've been trained to do. They're helpers of humanity, right? All of us educators, we educators are helpers of humanity. We're used to putting others first. And so when they agree to make that investment in themselves, and they tell their secretary, I'm not available during this hour, and they tell their leadership team, please don't call me on the radio or walk into my office because this is my time. If it were only that hour of reflection with a trusted equal and maintaining confidentiality, that would probably be enough in many instances. But of course, what they get is much, much more. They get a trained coach who's going to challenge, is going to ask very difficult questions, and who's going to push them. I love Dean Knight, toward the future, that adaptive thinking and, seeing things in a new way, that transformation that happens through really effective coaching. I'm going to turn it to Adam.
Thank you. My response will not be as succinct or as good, but so I think a lot about this idea of leadership and the way that we carry ourselves forward as individual leaders in a particular given setting. I think in education, that setting is very stressful, as many of you know. It is really complex, right? And education becomes more and more complex as the years go on. Coaching allows for that moment in time to step back, to think about and reflect on those complexities through a guide that may or may not have gone through those same experiences, and to ask those challenging questions. I am a huge Heifetz and Linsky fan. I think when we think about like adaptive leadership, a lot of times coaching allows us to unpack those adaptive challenges versus what we see time and time again, which are technical solutions to really, really adaptive challenges. And I think because of those layers of complexities that we talk about, we forget that we're dealing with humans. And most of the time, those challenges are adaptive by nature, right? And so when coaching allows us that space to understand more deeply what it is we actually need to get at, the value is unbelievable. I think the other piece is, and you know, one other clarification, we think about PD, right? We think about professional development as typically instructionally based, right? Most of the professional development that leaders receive are going to be in support or in honor of their school achieving, their students achieving at greater levels. The reality is that coaching is a very, very deep, very, very meaningful, very important form of professional development. If you're not able to reflect, self-reflect, and think about those complexities that we just discussed, you're not going to attack the problem in the right way. So, right, just by nature of going through that process of being more reflective, you're developing new skills, habits, right, that will lead you into a better form of leadership yourself. So
Thank you for that, both of you. And apparently the allergy monster has me too, so excuse me. What I'd like to also add to what they said so far is that I think it's really important, that word challenging I kept hearing come up. And the fact that in this relationship may even sometimes be the first time that leaders are challenged about what they're doing. So I think it'll get interesting as we move on to some further questions about kind of what happens in that relationship. Okay, so this is for Dara and Cheryl, if you don't mind. What would you say is the relationship between coaching and emotional intelligence, particularly for educational leaders? Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. That connection is definitely there, and not just for educational leaders, for all, right? I'm reminded of, I began my career teaching in 5th grade so many years ago, and we had something called social emotional learning, which we actually taught to students. They learned this. It was part of the curriculum. It was a beautiful thing. And then funding shifted, and that kind of went by the wayside. I think it needs to come back. But I often thought, why aren't we teaching this to adults? Because they're humans too, right? They have emotions. We are emotional beings. If you're a people leader, right, you're dealing with people. People have emotions. Emotional intelligence is tied to that. You can't separate the two. So it also often comes into play in coaching. But we know that through coaching, and we focus a lot on emotional intelligence. At least I'll speak for myself. I do. It comes up a lot in coaching. The focus does, because it is so people focused. But it helps people become self-aware, right? So they know their triggers. They know what activates them. It helps them figure out which behavior patterns help them become successful or not so successful in there. And it helps them understand how their emotions impact their not only their decision making, but also impact their relationships. And relationships are so important for leaders, but in the educational setting, right? We're very, very close and work closely together. So that's important. I think that emotional intelligence also enhances coaching effectiveness. And what I mean by that is that leaders with a high EQ, or EI, sometimes it's called, are more coachable. And they're also better coaches. So it goes both ways. I'm so blessed here to teach in the executive leadership coaching program. The first course that I teach is Essentials, and all the students take an EQ test. They figure out where their emotional intelligence is. They start with themselves to know, so that they can be better coaches. So it's tied very closely together. I think it also helps build strong relationships. The higher your EQ is, the better you are at able to build relationships with colleagues, with teachers, with families, with whomever, right? That works all the way around. And it helps you build that psychological safety, so that you're able to, people are able to be seen and heard, right? Strengthening that bond and that relationship as well. And then the last thing is that I said that we do focus a lot as coaches on emotional intelligence, and that it helps our clients manage stress. Anybody have any stress here? I mean, just raise your nobody. Okay, great. Well, talking to the people online then. Oh, and our AV guy back there. Yeah. A lot of stress going on right now in education, particularly the two-step, House Bill 2 right now. Part of it's passed, the part we didn't want to. Vouchers are here, but we don't have the funding yet. So there's stress externally and internally coming at us in education. It also helps practice empathy, which we have to be able to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. And it happens a lot in coaching. We help people see another perspective. What else could be true? So you build that empathy muscle. And then finally, just navigate those interpersonal dynamics. We're dealing with people, right? There's a lot going on. So EQ and coaching very closely tied together, I think. Cheryl, what do you have to add?
All of that was right. God, not that you need me to tell you that. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different angle. I've done a lot of studying on imposter phenomenon, which used to be called imposter syndrome. And I'll bet, but I won't ask you to raise your hand since we're not doing that, obviously. If any of you have ever been promoted to a new position that you worked very hard to get, I bet there was a period of time when what I call your shoes pinched your toes. You did not feel like you were there yet. I remember my first education leadership job as an assistant principal. I called my husband after school one day at 5:30 and started crying. He's like, "What is wrong with you?" I said, "My name's on the door, my title's on the door, I have my suit on, and I don't think I'm supposed to be here." That happens a lot. And when that happens, the leader, whether it's at an assistant principal or a superintendent, it happens at all levels. When that happens, that leader is in a precarious position. And emotional intelligence is going to be the route that gets them to confidence and to leading about what's the most important thing, which is people. People first, people before anything else, relationships first, trust first. And if you are so fearful that they made a mistake and that you fooled them and they hired the wrong person, and you don't want anyone to find out that you don't know what you're doing, you can't be that emotionally intelligent, trusting, trustworthy leader who's reaching out and taking care of others. You're just trying to put one foot in front of the other. The thing I love about coaching, one of the things, is it's transformational. It has what I call stickiness. And the reason it does is because when a person works with a coach, the coach is able to help them get down to the beliefs and values level. And when you change your belief or a value, you're changed. You can't go back and see it the other way. And when a person is in that position in life where and this is another thing that happens, we promote people because they're good at widget making or teaching or whatever. And we keep promoting them and we keep promoting them. And all of a sudden they get to a leadership level where they look in their toolbox that made them the best teacher, the teacher of the year, the teacher leader of the year, all of those things. And the things in that box aren't helping them. There's people running in and out of their office and there's people with all kinds of issues, and they don't have those tools, and they've never failed. They've always been the star student, the star teacher, the star employee. And it literally can put them back on their heels. And that's where a coach can come in. They don't have to tell anybody else where they work that they don't know what they're doing or they're scared to death. But they can tell their coach, because their coach is going to hold that sacred. And the coach is going to help them find their way through it to become the leader that they can be, and we know they can be. So that's my take on emotional intelligence and how it specifically can help when you're a leader and you have a coach.
Wow, powerful stuff there. I heard a few themes in particular, and one was really trust and just how essential trust is in that coaching relationship, but also the ability to self-reflect and to really have, I think, own how you're feeling in the moment and kind of what you're going through, and to have that person that really is on your side. that will help kind of get you through whatever you may be navigating next. And just how important, emotional intelligence is overall to the relationship. It's really just essential for strong relationships. And when we think about strong leaders, so much of that role is relationships and building relationships and strong ones. So, all right. So we'll just, turn that question on its head slightly for Adam. And if I could have you, Adam, talk about the relationship between coaching and well-being for leaders. What do you,
Can I pass?
yeah.
Uh,
What do you think the relationship is there?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's some like obvious factors, right? Like you have a trusted individual who's there to talk to you, and you have that opportunity to reflect and get pushed, and there's going to be growth, and you're going to learn how to navigate systems, which is a piece of that well-being. I think just for clarity's sake, so that we're all speaking the same language, when we think about well-being, I think a lot of times we think of the fuel that we're putting in our bodies, right? The food, those habits of food. We think about the exercise we give our bodies. We think about the rest we give our bodies. We think about the breath, right? And those are a tiny slice, a very small sliver of well-being. They're very important. Don't get me wrong, right? They're very important. I think when we think about well-being, there's this other layer, or this like other parts of the pie of brain health, right? And that decision making for yourself and the opportunity for you to drive forward and lead in a very specific way, built around an understanding of yourself through that brain power, is kind of the larger, more complex idea of well-being. So just to kind of qualify that. And that's something that we spend a great deal of time on when we think about coaching. We actually use a program, some of you may be familiar with Be Well, Lead Well, as a foundational assessment. We use their pulse assessment for our principles in terms of well-being. And there are technically 6 different areas of the Be Well, Lead Well program. One is there's 4 that kind of like expand into this 5th and then 6th element. One is fuel, right? So those pieces around like, what are we feeding our bodies? What exercise are we getting, et cetera. One is flow. So your ability to be in the moment, right? And you think about educators, how often, how frequently they are taken away from tasks, right? How many times they're having to multitask. And so we spend a lot of time on what is that flow and how do you build flow for yourself. Wisdom, which is how do you drive through purpose? What is your purpose? What is your vision? How do you overcome challenges? And then wonder, right? And if anybody in here has read the more recent book, Awe, The Power of Wonder, right? Really, there's a lot of science behind that. And then those 4 forces really kind of lay into this 5th element of thriving, right? You can't have those 4 and not thrive. Thriving, you can think of as resilience, your overall resilience. And so we want our principles to get to a point where all of those 4 forces are working in tandem for them to be able to thrive. The last step then in that kind of like secular nature of work is you're a leader. So how are you helping other how are you helping other people thrive? So we call that thriving amplified. I will just say, and I said to the group in our pre-call, it's something that we are challenged by, right? We hit the superficial, we set goals, we try to go deep. And a lot of times it's, here's this challenge at work that I want to talk about. This is the thing that is most pressing to me. People tend not to want to go deep on those personal well-being elements. It's scary, especially if you've spent a lifetime of poor well-being, especially if you've built the habits or the poor habits of poor well-being, right? It's really, really tough. And so there's a lot to unpack there. I think if you've read, oh shoot, I just went blank. I'm so sorry. It'll come back to me. But there's so many layers that people have to uncover for themselves about their well-being. in that process of becoming better leaders. And we really, really want to spend time with our principals on that process. That's part of what we do. And it takes about a year, right? Our program is 2 years. It takes about a year just for that relationship to get to a point where principals feel like they can let their guard down and acknowledge that, like, this is what's not working for me as a person. And I think once that has happened, their ability to see themselves more clearly, their ability to think about their efforts, their habits, the skills they are or need to develop for well-being allows them to move into the space of better leadership, right? It's all in honor of better, stronger leadership. And we help bridge that through a lot of the workshops and through a lot of the coaching that we provide our principals.
Thank you. I was going to say, I think probably one of you also probably have something to add.
I actually have a question,
Sure.
but I'm just wondering how, you know, as educational leaders, we have these little people coming at us and we have these big people coming at us and these problems that have to be solved immediately. How do you get principals and leaders to prioritize well-being? What stops that from going out the wayside when you're like, the building's on fire? Not literally, but you know, the building's on fire. I can't worry about this right now.
Yeah. So a big part of that is time management. What we've found and what I think we've noticed, and some of you may echo similar sentiments, is while we think we have really strong time management skills, we're not prioritizing the things that we actually need to prioritize, right? Like, so I know for myself, if I don't go out on that run, I am going to do I'm not going to be as strong as I would be in terms of my pace of thinking, in terms of my ability to get work done if I hadn't got out on the run. So I need to stop what I'm doing to take care of myself in that moment, right? So we do focus commitments at the beginning of the week. We ask principals to stop on Sunday night as you're writing those emails and getting ready for the week. What are your priorities for the week that you have to get done? And part of those priorities have to be things that are for you. The other thing that I would say is maybe this is not a surprise, we spend a good amount of time on breathing and the importance of breathing. A lot of administrators, when there is such high stress, right, with the buildings burning down, we forget to breathe. And the reality is that shallow breath, it impacts areas of the brain. It impacts your ability to think clearly. And so we ask them in those moments to stop, take a second, breathe deeply, and come back when you're ready, right? Which is okay. You have to be able to do that. I think when the building is burning down, there are some systems in place that you can use, right? But more generally.
And I love it that you're following the science about breath, right? When we are nervous or we're scared, we're taking the shallow breaths. It's activating the upper part of our synthetic nervous system, right? Which is like the 911, right? Your pulse is beating harder, you're sweating and all that. And to that deep, slow breathing actually activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which calms you down. That's when we say take 10 deep breaths, that sort of thing. So I love it that that program follows the science.
Please.
So-
I just want to interrupt you 1 second, Cheryl. How many people started breathing more deeply when he said that? Okay. See how influential it is just by saying it. But I'm sorry, go ahead, Cheryl.
As a leader, another aspect of leadership is your influence on who you're leading. In a principal's position, your school faculty is the make or break place for your kids. And something I learned early on, because I was an assistant principal with 5 different principals, that was fun. The building absorbs the emotional energy or not of the leader. So I'd walk in one building and everybody, same demographics, was frantic. Everyone was running around at high speed. No one was in the cafeteria. No one was in the lounge to eat lunch. Guess what their principal was like? Their principal stayed there till 10 o'clock every night. She ran the halls all day long. And that is what they thought the motto was supposed to be. Another school 2 miles away, by the way, great performance also, had a leader that believed in balance and wellness and high performance and taking care of his teachers. And he never sent them emails in the middle of the night. He never stayed till 10 o'clock unless it was PTA. And he always encouraged everybody to get their lunch. And what are you doing to take care of you? It wasn't in place of making teaching the priority. It was in addition to. And that building had a joy that you could feel when you walked in and you had been there 20 seconds. So emotional wellness as a leader not only is imperative for yourself, because we all know what kind of pressures there are as a leader, but it literally transforms your organization.
And can I add one more thing?
Please.
If I had to say one goal that principals and other educational leaders select as something they really want to work on over the course of a year, it is, I want to delegate and develop other people. And I think what they learn, they initially delegate very operational kinds of tasks, you know, the Veterans Day Assembly or the PTA programs, those sorts of things. But as time goes on, what they realize is that they're not just delegating so that they have more time to think about other things and do different kinds of work. They're really empowering other people who also get very excited and want to take on more things. And so, you know, I had someone recently who's worked on delegating all year long, and she is now, after these 20 sessions, at a space where, you know, I can really, by delegating, I'm developing and empowering other people. And what is a level 5 leader? It is a leader who develops other leaders, right? And she is now in this place of, I have all of these other leaders who are coming right along with me, because I initially started out delegating kind of operational things, but I've now developed them and empowered them, and they really are doing essential transformational work now.
Wow, really, really good discussion here. You know, it's funny, a few things that, again, I continue to hear are around trust. Many times as a leader, I think you have to trust yourself to even take care of yourself. And I liked what Adam mentioned in the beginning about, if I don't go for that run, then he's not going to probably be as productive. And if you think about the well-being, someone else gave the example of when you walk into the building, how you can feel the tension or the stress. And it's typically reflective of the leader. And if you think about it, uncoached leaders oftentimes are individuals that are in some ways flying by the seat of their pants, and they haven't taken care of themselves. And I like that term, poor well-being. And I had to chuckle on the inside to say, ooh, how many of us have had times where we've really had somewhat of a poor well-being, but now we're much better? And it's typically because we've started to lead, well, receive some coaching, hopefully, but we now are able to lead by example. Because once you're able to showcase that effort, your team will respond to that accordingly. So all of these things, really valuable insights and lessons. Okay, so let's move along here to the next question. What does it mean to be a coach leader? And what is challenging about that? That's the first part of the question. And then the second part, what is beneficial about taking a coaching stance as a leader? So what does it mean to be a coach leader? And what are the challenges about that? We'll start with that. So Dara or Jennifer, whoever wants to grab that first.
Let me start. Okay. Yeah. Coach leader. Wow. It's such a powerful, powerful tool. Coaches who teach leaders to coach really, really know this and understand it. It is about asking powerful questions instead of giving answers. Right? Who's a problem solver in here? Probably most of us, right? And in education, the education leaders have to be. They're solving problems all the time. But it's about listening and asking those questions and listening with curiosity, right? Really trying to understand what's going on. It's also about focusing on development over direction, not giving direction, but thinking about developing these individuals. And then fostering this culture of reflection and learning, right? That's what we tout. That's what we're here for, right? Education. It's about reflection and learning and accountability. Now, there are some challenges around it. There really are, but the benefits are great. So let's talk about the challenges first. So the challenges is, first of all, you have to let go of control. We don't want to do that, right? You want to hold that tight, but you have to let go of that control in order to develop others. You have to let people make mistakes, make their own mistakes. You have to slow down. It's not as fast as just fixing the problem. We could just tell them what to go do. That'd be so much faster, right? But they're not learning when you're doing that. So you have to slow down and let them work it out, right? And we're in a pretty fast-paced environment in education, right? There's not a lot of time to do that, but the rewards are great. It's also a change of mindset. If your staff, if your colleagues, if whomever you're working with are used to being told what to do, and all of a sudden you ask them what they're going to do about it, they're like, what am I going to do about it? I don't know. Right. So there's a mindset shift for you. You're now a developer, you're a coach, and it's a mind shift set for them that they're now accountable for what they choose to go forth and do. You also have to balance, right? Because now you're a coach leader, but guess what? You might also be an evaluator. Well, you might also have to be a manager at times, and you do just have to tell them what to do. Just because you're a coach leader doesn't mean that you get to let go of that management role that you have, right? You have to balance those as well. And we spoke about trust earlier. It's really about building trust first. If you're going to coach someone, you have to build that trust before you can actually start doing it so that they have a safe environment. And I'll just go ahead and talk about the benefits, and then Jennifer, you can share both as well. So the benefits that I jotted down here are, first of all, it's empowering to be seen, to be heard, to be seen as capable of doing something. Oh, I can make that decision? Yeah, you can, right? It also builds leadership capacity. We talked about that. You're developing others. I think a leader's job is to develop others. That's one of their main roles, I believe, is to help create new leaders. And if you don't give them the chance to do that, they never get the chance to do it, right? They can't build that skill set. It improves engagement as well when you do this, because if people feel seen and heard and supported, they're more engaged. They're more motivated to do their job, to step up and do a little bit more. It also drives sustainable change, because when solutions come from inside as opposed to outside, it's much more sustainable, and they're more likely to carry through with that. If you've ever told someone what to do and they go and they don't do it, and you're like, well, why didn't they do that? Right? It wasn't their idea. They didn't have the buy-in. So this really helps get buy-in and helps them have ownership in it. And then finally, it creates that learning culture, right? Again, to the reflection, the feedback, giving and receiving feedback, and being more successful. So Jennifer, I'll let you.
Well, I think just to echo what you said, I think a coach leader really takes seriously that responsibility to develop other leaders in their stead. So I think that really is the primary thing. I think, the challenge is, as you said, you have to relinquish some control when you function as a coach leader. The other piece of that is, in addition to relinquishing some control, you have to move out of your comfort zone. And there is that sense of not knowing what is going to happen. Adam referenced technical and adaptive work and technical work. We have the skills, the knowledge, the know-how right now to do technical work. We have to develop the skills as we are flying the plane, if you will, to do adaptive work. And how many of us love showing up in a professional context not knowing? Right? I mean, principals for sure were great assistant principals, which is all about operations and execution. They know a lot. And then they move into the principalship and the executive director role and the deputy sup role and the superintendent role, which is all about people and all about adaptation. I mean, think about in any campus in March and April, what's happening around student learning. We're identifying the students who haven't mastered the standards. We're coming up with schedules for tutoring. We're finding the faculty to provide the tutoring. We're shifting classes around, right? Those are all very technical solutions to a very adaptive problem, which is, what does high quality first teaching really look like? And often we spend so much time with the technical and operational, we don't get to that really hard adaptive work because we don't know. And we have to show up as leaders saying, I don't really know the answer to that, but we're going to ask some questions and we're going to figure it out together. So that, I think that's really one of the challenges. And, you know, this issue of growth mindset too, we're really good in education about inviting students, young people, to have growth mindset. It's challenging as adults to show up with growth mindset and say, I don't really do this very well, but I'm going to stand up here in front of you and be a public learner and be transparent and learn right here in front of you. That's challenging. And I think that's part of the coach leader piece that's really challenging. And I'll give you this frame. Pamela McLean talks about leading from the front and leading from behind. And she says, leading from the front, we tell, we know, we change a specific behavior, and the list goes on. Leading from behind, we ask, we wonder, and we invite insight into behavior. Sounds a lot like coaching. And I think, you know, in terms of benefits, Dara very eloquently named a lot of those, developing leadership capacity in others. I think creating the space with questions to invite multiple and diverse perspectives, really creating that space, that quiet, still spot where people's opinions can come in to the room and be part of the solution. And I think, you know, what does that lead to? That diverse perspectives, it leads to innovation, leads to adaptation. And so I think all of those things, more leaders, more innovation, more diverse perspectives are the beautiful aspects of being a coach leader.
You know, one of the
Thank
things I
you.
forgot to mention was that in the long run, it saves time.
Yeah.
Initially, it's a lot of work up front,
Yes.
right? But it does save time because then people can actually solve their own problems. That's what we're trying to do, is get them to that point, right? So challenging up front, but on the back end, it can also save you time. People not constantly knocking on your door to get you to solve their problem, because as soon as you solve one, they want you to solve all of them.
The most powerful question a coach leader can ask, what do you think you should do?
Cheryl, so I'm going to ask you, what do you think? What do you think we should do?
So I'm going to push a little bit on this subject. I would like to challenge anyone in a leadership position. Don't pull coach leader out as a tool. Become a coach leader. Show up as a coach leader. That takes a lot. And it takes a lot if you're taking over from someone that wasn't a coach leader. The person I took over my first school from, they had one routine in the entire building: ask the principal, including like, where do they put their lesson plans? Everything, the routine was ask the principal. I couldn't even go to the bathroom. Like, they would follow me like little ducks, you know, what? So if you are taking over for someone who has been very directive and authoritarian, it's going to take a while. One of my lovely teachers, we're still good friends 30 years later, came in one day and turned bright red and had her little fist in a ball and said, just tell me what you want me to do. And I couldn't figure out why I wasn't making connection with her. If I said the sky was blue, she'd say it was gray. If I said it was white, she said it was gray. It just didn't matter. She was very attached to the former leader who told everybody what to do about everything, including what kind of towels to put in the lounge. And so she wasn't used to someone not doing that. She thought it meant I didn't know what to do. She thought I was clueless. And so it's going to take being that coach leader and helping your people you're leading get on board with having a coach leader. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay.
Thank you. And as you were telling your story, Cheryl, it was reminding me of so many leaders that I've had that clearly I know now were uncoached. But if you think about that, you know, it's really significant, I think, just how much the coaching framework really helps you to begin to not only understand who you are as a coach, but really who this person is that's sitting across the table or the Zoom screen or however you meet with your clients with you. But I'm just curious, Adam, if you have any thoughts as well about the benefits of coach leadership as well before we get ready to wrap and ask questions.
Yeah. So take my little like soapbox moment here. This is like the thing that I think most passionate about. We know over half of new principals will leave their profession or leave their current role within 3 years. We know it takes about 5 years for a principal to have an impact on the academic outcomes of students at the school. The average lifespan of a principal right now in the profession is 3.7 years. Only about roughly a quarter of principals across the United States have had any coaching. But we know that coaching, and we're talking about the type of coaching we're talking about today, right? Not necessarily instructional coaching, is one of the most significant factors in longevity and desire to stay in the program, right? Because you're building these skills. So, I'm not going to call it like an epidemic, but I'm going to say like it's one of the most important jobs in the world. Principals also is on average, right, across the United States, their impact in instruction is about 25% of the overall efforts, right, of a school, because they influence instructional models, they influence culture, they influence community, right? So their influence, that 25% influence, is essential. When principals leave, on the flip side of the coin, excuse me, we know that there's higher rates of cynicism. We know that there's higher rates of teachers leaving. We know that there's more conflict across the board. And that constant turnover, right, it does a disservice to the profession. So if you're in the room, you're in education, you're working with folks in education, working with principals, think about the ways that you can help implement or influence or provide these opportunities of coaching as a genuine influencer in outcomes, right? There's really nothing more important, I think, because it does set the tone. I think the other piece, and this is a very personal note, this is not a pick note. I see principalship as this like pinnacle, right? You do get to run your own little community, and you have such an influence. And like that, to me, is part of the reason why I do this work, is because I want principals to stay in their role, because it is so important for the kids and the communities and the impact that principal has long term. It can't be said enough. I think the role that the principal leader, the coach leader, excuse me, has on influencing those forces is immense. It goes without saying. And if we could be just a little bit of a thread of support for that principal to stay in that role longer, great. We've done our job. And principals that get that coaching, principals that have that opportunity for coaching, they do stay in that role longer. So,
all right.
End with that.
Well, thank you for that. We want to make sure that we save enough time for you all to ask our brilliant panelists some questions. So I know that there are some mics in the room. For those that are online, I know that there's somebody that will capture your questions as well. So please feel free to jump out to the mic stand and ask what questions that you may have. You can ask the entire panel or you can select one. It's up to you.
I think Kim has something she's going to share with us. So while you're thinking about your questions, don't be shy. Think about your questions. We have a mic stand right back there.
Okay. And thank you, panelists. The great question I have, as you all were talking, it reminded me of my days in adult education as a dean of students. And I love how you brought out emotional intelligence. And so I would ask you all as coaches, what methodologies do you use, or would you suggest, or have you suggest, certainly working with educational leaders, and my mind is thinking leaders all the way down to the students having impact, of how to identify their own biases that could be a challenge to their success?
I'll share something. When I became interested in emotional intelligence and saw the value of it, I knew that I didn't know enough about it. So in addition to my own research and reading, I went out to become certified to give an assessment in emotional intelligence. So I always use that as a baseline for them to understand where they are, where they see themselves, and where they're leveling out at and where they want to be and what goals they want to work on. So I'll just start with that. Others?
Well, first off, I think the coach has to become acutely aware of their own biases. We all have biases, and the dangerous ones are the ones that we aren't aware of. So I think the biggest learning journey is becoming a coach, because you have to study yourself. As far as how I deal with things that possibly are biases when they come up with my client, is I use direct language and challenge and ask them to help me understand how you said this and you said this, and how do they go together? Or I use some of my NLP techniques to get at values and beliefs. I think that's where real change and transformation happens, and for all of us. Oh, sorry. Neurolinguistic programming. It's, look it up. I don't even know how to explain. It's a field of study that's very deep, that other industries use, but it's extremely helpful as a coach.
I would just want to add that when I was talking about the assessment is if they don't start with a self-awareness, which is the baseline for emotional intelligence, they could never become aware of their biases, right? Even though we help to try to point those out. So it has to begin with that self-awareness point.
So that for us, that's a way that we start a lot of the initial conversations with principals, is around like our work is around equity-driven efforts, and understanding your hidden biases to do this work. And so we bring that into the coaching sessions as well, through that like same reflective, iterative process of what are the things that you don't know about yourself, what are the things that you're missing, and helping to spotlight some of those things that they might be missing is important, and doing that through the work of building trust, right? Because those can be really tricky, difficult, hard conversations, but they're also really important. And so laying the foundation of like, what stays in the room is going to stay, what's said in the room is going to stay in the room. This is not something that's going to leave. Understanding that, like, yes, we're going to talk about your hidden biases. We're going to talk about the efforts that you're making in terms of all students, in terms of all access for all students. That has to be a foundational element of like, you understand and I understand that that's where we're headed. And without that, we can't move forward. So that's.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question online I'm going to read out here real
Okay,
loud.
great.
Real loud. Lots of companies expect their leaders to be directing, or they choose leaders like this. This is a challenge for those that take more coach leadership approach. How do you find the right balance? How do you advise people approaching this?
So my belief is coaching really has to start at the top. When I go into an organization who is not a coaching culture organization, I don't accept the contract if the head of the company's not there, because it's hard. Now, can it be done? Can you still be a coach leader in an organization that's not coach-like? You can, but you have to walk a fine line and build as you can understanding of the value of being a coach leader. For me, if I didn't think there was a very good chance that I was joining an organization that understood the value, I probably wouldn't take it. But if you're already in one, work to share, plant seeds, share little tidbits. There is tons of information on the ICF website. We pay for a very robust research project every 2 years, and the ROI of coaching and the difference between the number of companies who are extremely successful and the percentage of coaching in those companies versus the others who ran, it's night and day. It's like 80-something% for the successful ones and 20-something% for the others. So use some data, get some stories going, and start working for others. They don't understand. You know, I don't know how many people I still talk to, and they think coaching is like soccer coaching. you know, they don't know what they don't know.
And I would add, I'm going to quote my former superintendent from Dallas ISD, Dr. Michael Hinojosa, who said, command decisions are easy to make and very hard to implement because you get compliance, but you don't get commitment. And by contrast, collaborative decisions are hard to make. It takes a long time, but you don't have to chase and monitor for implementation because you have commitment.
That's good.
I was told early on in my teaching career, an administrator had told me to teach a particular way, and I felt like that wasn't the right way to do it. And I talked with a neighbor teacher, and she said, well, just close your door and teach. I was like, you're right. So I closed my door and I did what I thought was right, which happened to be luckily. So my suggestion too is for this leader in these organizations, right? Close your door and coach, right? You're going to get more productivity, more motivation, more buy-in from those that are your direct reports than you would if you're directing them all day long, right? So mine's a little bit of a rebel, but yeah, close your door and coach.
I find too that sometimes the very thing people want is the thing they can't do. So they want somebody else to do it. So, all right. Other questions? Any more online?
And
Oh,
I'm
no,
just
please.
polling, if you could please step to the microphone.
Sir,
Here and
that
there.
you had your hand up? You don't mind to come to the mic?
Sorry.
We want to make sure everybody can hear you and online too.
Thank you.
Oh, could you just go over the curriculum? The training curriculum a little bit? ICF coaching.
Sure.
Are you referring to what we do here at SMU or what it requires to be a coach?
To get certified ICF coach.
Okay. Well, I'll start. If I miss something, Cheryl, you let me know. Or my other coach educators here. We're all coach educators, I guess. So it takes 60 hours of coach training, and it takes 10 hours of mentorship. So you have to be mentored by a credentialed coach. You also have to coach for 100 hours. Some of those can be pro bono, but the majority of those have to be from paid clients. You have to submit a recording of a coaching session, and you have to be able to pass according to the core curriculum. They have their core competencies. You have to hit those core competencies in that recording, which is assessed by ICF assessors. And you also have to pass an exam. You have to take a test. They want you to be tested on the core competencies and the content that you've been taught. What did I miss? Oh, yeah, ethics too, as well as the core competencies. There's a set of ethics that ICF have that you have to adhere to, and you're tested over as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Other questions? Use this opportunity. You have something burning.
We'd love a question from a current SMU coaching student or former student. There she is.
I'm just curious about artificial general intelligence and how that is going to affect coaching, and also how it's going to affect how you coach people that are working in the educational environment, how they're going to have to cope with this. It seems like we don't have a lot of time before it becomes completely pervasive, maybe not even a year. And I'm just wondering how you're preparing for it, and how do you think it's going to impact coaching in particular?
I would have bet money that question would be asked today. So thank you. I got nervous. I sort of woke up this morning and thought, I'm really ready for this. And then I thought somebody's going to ask about AI. So I'm gonna talk and then let you gather your thoughts, rest of the panel. You know, I got curious this morning and I Googled ICF and AI, and sure enough, The International Coaching Federation has come up with standards and a set of ethics and competencies and questionnaires around AI. So that's really, really, really good to know. I didn't have time this morning to really dive into them. I know that a very common thing already is using some tool, an AI tool, to record sessions. I personally have not done that yet. I don't know if some of the rest of you have done that. I know that really just scratches the surface of what you were asking. And I'm going to say this, and this is just my opinion. I think what I see with AI, as we ask ChatGPT to create a document, is that it's pretty superficial. And we all know the power of a word or a phrase in coaching. And AI may get there, but I think at this point, AI is not going to grab onto the true depth of meaning of that particular word or phrase the way a trained coach was. I'm going to bounce that over to you all.
So some of you may have heard, or I think there was a bit on a couple weeks back about therapists that are using AI, and that for the most part, the responses that participants are getting are as good, if not better, on par with kind of what they should expect to be receiving as support from their therapists, right? And while I know that there's a difference there, I think it's important to acknowledge that it's flooding the system, and it's going to be something that we have to work within and utilize effectively. I think the humanistic element is always going to be really important in terms of the relationship and being able to unpack and uncover some of these difficult things about ourselves with another human being. Right. And so to me, that's like the argument for the individual and for the relationship, while acknowledging you can get some of these same answers from AI and you can put them into AI. And there are some companies already that we've actually connected with that are doing coaching through AI in the classroom with teachers, and some similar that are also doing that with leaders in instructional capacities that have had really good results, right? I think it's a huge value add when we think about costs and reduction in funding, that we can utilize systems like that. But I think to the point around coaching specifically, there is a huge opportunity. We just have to be really careful about how we navigate that opportunity.
And I venture to say the more prevalent that AI becomes, the more necessary it is for EI, emotional intelligence, right? Because we're not machines. So just throw that out there. But also, ICF has just hired an AI expert to look at the opportunities that Adam was just saying, but also the challenges around it, the ethics around it, the competencies, and how it's being used for good and for evil, I guess, if you will, but really how it's being used so that there's some sort of check and balance on that.
So I think the LLMs, the large language models like ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude, those only can use what has been put into them. Now, the massive goodness about them is thousands and thousands and thousands of documents and books have been put into them. And so they can, at a nanosecond, look at all of that and come back with what they think is the best amalgamation of information. However, there's work, I love tech, so you're going to be able to tell this. There's work being done on what's called generative AI, which is different. It actually teaches the computer to generate their own stuff. I think we're at the door is barely cracked. And I don't know where all that's going to lead and how all that's going to get, how good it's going to be. I've played with it some. In fact, just 2 nights ago, I took a transcript of a coaching session because I just wanted to see. I'm an assessor. So I just wanted to see what it would do. And I put the transcript in, and I can write really good prompts. And I told it was an expert ICF assessor, and this transcript was for recording for ACC. And please give me a complete breakdown by competency and ACC bars as to what was observed and what wasn't observed and all of that. And then write me a paragraph of strengths and opportunities for development, which is what assessors do. I would give it about an 80. And 80 is not good enough for me. If somebody's working hard to become assessed and accredited, I want that assessment to be a 100. It did pretty good, but it missed stuff. You know, and I like to play with it like that. However, I do use things like if I have a techie client who likes technology and they come and they say, you know, I want to focus on this. I've been thinking about it for 2 weeks. So I usually say, okay, so where are we at during those 2 weeks? Where are you at with it? And usually they've been on hold waiting to come to me. And so I just say, would you like to see something you could do in preparation for coming to me? Because those kinds of things don't have to be on hold. You can at least start brainstorming and generating ideas so that when you get to coaching, you're ready to go. So I embrace it cautiously.
Thank you very much. That's great.
Great question. I think you woke up the whole panel on that. And I'm not even going to address it because I deal with this question every day in technology. But what I will say is that we're not going to be replaced by robots. But okay, please, next question.
You had mentioned earlier about making sure the leadership in the organization is on board with coaching. So what happens when you're coaching an individual who's one of those command and control type people who have really never been challenged and they're very resistant? How do you handle that situation? And do you eventually get to the point where you refer them to a psychologist to try to deal with those like value and beliefs behind like much deeper? So how do you handle that situation with someone who's really resistant to opening up and going through the process?
I'll let Cheryl start and then I'll finish.
Thanks. I don't think I've ever referred one of those to therapy. I have referred other clients to therapy. What I found with those is it's usually fear, and it's usually only what I know and how I know to react. So I work really hard on trust. And with that type of individual, I find I have to stick one toe in the water and show him that or her that I trust them to keep it sacred. And they eventually will stick one toe in, and I show them I'm trustworthy. And we build on that. People who are command and control people get security from that. And you can't just rip the security away. You have to build foundation under so that they're willing to venture out a little bit.
And I was just going to add that that coaching client typically won't be successful in therapy either. Because there is an onus to wanting to change. So I find that individuals like that typically have to have something significant, be facing a significant loss that motivates the change. And then from there, maybe you can slide in and say, maybe you should talk a little longer to someone else. But typically that person is the anomaly, or if you think about the bell curve, they're on the ends. So.
Thank you. Even better recommendation.
Yes. Yes, you often have to work around those folks. Anyone else watching? Oh, good. Good.
Hi. Okay. So my question is about, and I appreciate Adam already mentioning Be Well, Lead Well, which I've already been kind of Googling, but do you have any recommendations as to like frameworks that you use for coaching? I know like Jennifer, you have a book and, but I'd be interested in any frameworks that help leaders in education.
Was your question to help leaders in education coach?
I'm a coach, and so I'm just looking into different frameworks that are specific for leaders in education, like the Be Well, Lead Well. I was curious if there's any others that you guys use.
So I'll just say the formerly the New York Leadership Academy, now the Leadership Academy, their framework and model for coaching is excellent. And there are some nuances there in terms of the balance between instructional oversight and executive coaching elements that you need to be aware of. But I think the framework is phenomenal. And I certainly would recommend that to folks.
And I would add anything by Elena Aguilar, and she is an instructional coach. However, or maybe it is and rather than however, she really moves beyond what is kind of instrumental coaching, which instructional coaching can be, and she really gets into developmental and transformational coaching. And I think her book on coaching teams is really excellent. So Elena Aguilar would be another one to throw into the mix.
Others, I think we have time for maybe one more question.
And I'm just pulling those lonely people online who are looking at us, looking at you. Anyone here in the audience?
Sure, thank you.
So how do you help clients balance that role of evaluator, supervisor, manager with that of coach leader? And I think, Dara, you alluded to turning the table. They're used to you telling them what to do, but all of a sudden you're asking them, what would you do? So it just seems like a tight spot. Go ahead.
Yeah, it can be a very tight spot, right? And that is the leader knowing which role is needed when. That's key, is for them to develop so that they know when they can coach, when they have to manage, and when they're evaluating, right? They have to be able to assess the situation. And I think that's dependent on what the situation, where they are and who they're leading.
I'm talking too much, aren't I?
Yes.
Sorry. So my rule is no one gets any negative comment on an evaluation unless we have already discussed it thoroughly. My written evaluations have no surprises. Therefore, the evaluation conference can also be coach because I'm not bringing them in and surprising them with something. Those earlier conversations before it becomes written are also coach-like because it's about something that needs to improve. And so we talk about it. How could we best go about improving this? What are your ideas? What have you noticed that's worked better in the past? All of those things, because it's okay to fail. You'll never get better if you don't try. And so they know I'm not going to come in and go, oh, that didn't work. No, because they were trying it. In fact, they got to write me notes, emails, sticky notes, whatever. Hey, I'm going to try such and so today at 9 if you want to come in. Because they knew I could come in and it would be okay if they fell on their face and had to try something else. So evaluations are really just a culmination for me of all the things we've talked about during the year. The only time I switched over to quadrant 4 supervisory is if someone else wasn't willing to partner with me and grow, wasn't able to grow, one of those two things. And it took a lot to get me to decide that, because if you go through education to become a teacher, you aren't dumb. And you did it for a reason. So unless that flame is completely squelched and there's nothing I can fan, then I'm coach. I help develop.
All right. Did you have a question? Oh, no. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much to this generous and very dynamic panel. I do want to just end on a quick lightning round of questions. You all didn't know this was coming, did you? Okay, so you have to just answer. You're going to pick one or the other. And if you'll just pass the mic or share the mic. We'll start with you, Dr. Jennifer. Puppies or kittens?
Oh, kittens.
Adam?
Puppies.
Puppies.
Puppies. I have a brand new golden retriever.
All right. Okay, for me, none of the above. Okay, so although my 10-year-old is quite in the fight with me these days about it. Okay, Next one, coffee or tea?
How about both?
All right.
Both.
Both.
A little coffee in my cream.
All right. All coffee for me and some tea on the side. Okay. We're coming up on the summer, so I'll ask you beaches or mountains?
Mountains, because they're cooler.
Beaches.
Mountains. Our RV goes to Estes Park every summer.
All right, beaches. And final question, this is going to be a really hard one, so really think about it. Ice cream or candy?
Ice cream.
Gelato.
Ice cream.
We live in Texas, ice cream. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. This was a great discussion.